Ayla's heart raced as she activated the mating sequence with the human male. She was unprepared for the overwhelming surge of sensations that flooded her prion physiology. Her vision blurred, her breath caught in her throat, and her dual hearts pounded dangerously fast. This was not how she had envisioned her mission to save her species. Just hours earlier, Ayla had stood before the High Council on her home planet of Priya. Her research data painted a grim future. Centuries of selective breeding had left their gene pool stagnant, and fertility rates had plummeted to critical levels. The solution was clear yet radical. They needed to introduce new genetic material from another species, humans. With their genetic diversity and surprising compatibility, humans were the perfect candidates. The Council's deliberations were tense, filled with heated debates about ethical implications and potential risks. In the end, desperation won. They authorized a covert mission to Earth, with Ayla, the brilliant young xenobiologist, at its helm. As Ayla's ship entered Earth's atmosphere, alarms blared through the cockpit. System failures cascaded, forcing an emergency landing in a remote forest. The impact was jarring, leaving Ayla dazed and injured amidst the smoking wreckage. Meanwhile, Marcus Reynolds, a former Marine turned private security consultant, received an urgent call from a shadowy government agency. His mission: investigate recent UFO sightings and secure the crash site. Upon arriving, his training kicked in as he surveyed the alien craft. Its design was unlike anything he had ever seen, confirming his suspicions of extraterrestrial origin. As he approached cautiously, he spotted movement within the wreckage. Ayla emerged, her silvery skin gleaming in the moonlight, her large multifaceted eyes locking onto Marcus. Despite her injuries, she recognized him as her target, the key to her species' survival. Driven by desperation and duty, she moved forward. Marcus's instincts screamed danger, but something in the alien's demeanor gave him pause. He lowered his weapon slightly, allowing Ayla to approach. In that moment, two worlds collided. Ayla, motivated by her mission and the weight of her entire species' future, made a bold move. She activated her species' mating pheromones, a cocktail of chemicals designed to entice and arouse. However, she gravely miscalculated. The human pheromones hit her system like a supernova, overwhelming her carefully calibrated biology. Her hearts raced to alarming levels, her respiratory system struggled, and her nervous system fired erratically. Marcus watched in horror as the alien before him collapsed, gasping for air. His mission objectives collided with his innate desire to help. In that critical moment, he faced a choice that would shape the future of interspecies relations. As Ayla fought for breath, the fate of two species hung in the balance. Her desperate gambit to save her race through human breeding had brought her to the brink of cardiac arrest. Now it was up to Marcus to decide whether to aid this alien visitor or prioritize his mission to contain a potential threat. In that split second, Marcus's heart raced as he saw Ayla's silvery skin taking on a sickly hue. He made his choice. Rushing forward, he knelt beside her, his mind racing through his first aid training. Her physiology was utterly foreign, but he could see she was struggling to breathe. He noticed a faint sweet scent in the air: pheromones. Realizing the alien's biology was reacting violently to the human chemicals, he acted quickly. Reaching for his gear, he pulled out a small air filtration unit typically used for smoke or chemical hazards. With deft movements, he modified it into a makeshift breathing mask. "Hold on," he murmured gently, fitting the device over Ayla's face. "This should help filter out the pheromones." Ayla's multifaceted eyes locked onto his, a mix of fear and gratitude evident within their depths. Slowly, her breathing steadied. Marcus watched as color returned to her skin, the silvery sheen brightening as the immediate crisis passed. His tactical mind kicked in, and he quickly surveyed the crash site, noting the scattered debris and the still smoking wreckage of the ship. He needed to secure the area. Pulling out his satellite phone, he dialed a secure line. "This is Reynolds. I've made contact with an extraterrestrial being. The situation is under control, but I need immediate support and further instructions." The voice on the other end responded, "Understood, Reynolds. A team led by Dr. Lydia Carr is en route. Maintain your position and avoid further contact if possible. Await further instructions." As he ended the call, he turned back to Ayla, who had managed to sit up, still breathing through the makeshift mask. Her large eyes studied him intently. Can you understand me? Marcus asked, keeping his voice low and calm. Ayla nodded slowly and carefully removed the mask. Yes, she replied, her voice carrying an otherworldly lilt. I am Ayla. Thank you for your assistance. Marcus's training collided with his curiosity. I'm Marcus Reynolds. Are you injured? What brought you to Earth? Ayla hesitated, weighing her words. I came seeking help. My people, the Prions, face extinction. We need... She trailed off, looking away. Marcus sensed there was more to the story, but before he could press further, the whir of a helicopter approached, likely Dr. Carr and her team. Miles above the Earth's surface, Commander Yarrick stood rigid on the bridge of the Prion rescue vessel. His stern features were set in a scowl as he reviewed the latest data. No response had come from Ayla's ship. His second-in-command reported, last known coordinates placed her in a densely forested region. Yarrick's multifaceted eyes narrowed. Prepare the landing party. We'll retrieve Ayla and any data she gathered. And remember, he added coldly, we cannot risk exposure. Any humans who have made contact are to be eliminated. As the rescue team prepared for their covert insertion, Marcus faced Dr. Lydia Carr, a sharp-eyed woman whose excitement barely masked her professional demeanor. Mr. Reynolds, she said briskly, I'm Dr. Carr, xenobiologist. Marcus quickly relayed the events, watching as her eyes widened with each new detail. When he finished, she turned to study Ayla, who had remained silent throughout. Remarkable, Lydia breathed. She approached Ayla slowly, hands held out in a non-threatening gesture. I'm Dr. Lydia Carr. Can you tell us more about your people and why you're here? Ayla glanced at Marcus, who gave a small nod of encouragement. She took a deep breath and began to explain the dire situation of the Prions, their dwindling population, stagnant gene pool, and the desperate mission to find compatible genetic material. As Ayla spoke, Marcus found himself captivated. The alien story was one of desperation and hope, a civilization on the brink, willing to risk everything for survival. He felt a growing sense of empathy, recognizing the universal drive to protect one's people. Dr. Carr listened intently, her scientific mind already racing with possibilities. This is unprecedented, she said finally. The potential for both our species. It's enormous. But there are protocols, diplomatic channels. Marcus interrupted, surprising himself. With all due respect, Doctor, I don't think we have time for bureaucracy. Ayla's ship is damaged. If we don't help her, her people might send others. We have a chance here to establish peaceful first contact. Lydia hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and the opportunity before them. Finally, she nodded. You're right, Marcus. We'll need to repair the ship and establish communication with the Prions, but we must move quickly and quietly. As they began to formulate a plan, none of them were aware of the Prion rescue team making their final approach. Commander Yarrick's ship, cloaked and silent, touched down mere miles from their location. The stern commander led his team out, weapons primed, moving with deadly purpose towards Ayla's crash site. In the gathering darkness, two civilizations stood on the precipice of a momentous encounter. The actions of Ayla, Marcus, and their unlikely alliance would shape the future of human-Prion relations. Yet as they worked to bridge the gap between their species, the looming threat of Yarrick's militant approach threatened to shatter the fragile peace before it could even begin. Marcus's instincts, honed by years of military service, suddenly flared to life. Something was off. His eyes scanned the surrounding forest, catching subtle movements in the underbrush that didn't match the gentle sway of the wind. A faint hum, barely perceptible, reached his ears. Ayla, he whispered urgently. We've got company. Ayla's multifaceted eyes widened in alarm. Yarrick, she breathed. He must have sent a rescue team. Marcus's mind raced, assessing their options. The crashed ship loomed behind them, a twisted hunk of alien metal that now seemed more like a beacon than a refuge. He turned to Lydia, who had gone pale at the news. Doctor, we need to move now, Marcus commanded, his voice low but firm. As they retreated towards the ship, Marcus's gaze fell on the scattered debris. An idea struck him. Ayla, does your ship have any functioning systems left? Ayla nodded, her silvery fingers dancing over a partially intact control panel. Some auxiliary power remains. What do you have in mind? She asked. We need a defense perimeter, Marcus explained quickly. Can you reroute power to create some kind of energy barrier? Ayla's eyes lit up with understanding as her hands flew over the alien technology, repurposing systems in ways Marcus could barely comprehend. Within moments, a faint shimmer appeared in the air around them, like heat rising from sun-baked asphalt. It's not much, Ayla admitted, but it should provide some protection. Marcus nodded, his mind already on the next step. What about your sensors? Can they detect your people's cloaking technology? Ayla hesitated. They're not designed for that, but... Her voice trailed off as she focused on the ship's systems. After a tense minute, she looked up triumphantly. I've recalibrated them. It won't be perfect, but we should be able to see through their stealth. As the makeshift sensors came to life, the fate of two species hung in the balance. The faint shimmer of the energy barrier pulsed in the dim light, creating an ethereal glow that offered a semblance of safety. Marcus, Ayla, and Dr. Lydia Carr huddled behind the makeshift protection, hearts racing as the sounds of the approaching rescue team grew louder. The forest seemed to thrum with tension, as if it too held its breath. Ayla, how long can this barrier hold? Marcus asked, glancing at the shimmering curtain that now separated them from potential danger. Minutes, perhaps longer, depending on how much energy I can reroute, she replied, her voice steady despite the fear in her multifaceted eyes. But it won't withstand any sustained fire. We need to prepare for a quick escape if they discover us. Lydia nodded, her sharp mind racing. I'll set up a makeshift medical station in case we need to treat injuries. We may also need to assess any damage to Ayla's ship. Marcus glanced around, his instincts flaring. We need to create a distraction, something that will draw them away from us long enough for us to regroup. Ayla, do you have any devices or technology we can use to create noise or movement? Ayla thought for a moment. I can activate a distress signal from the ship's secondary systems, but it may not last long. It will draw their attention away, but we must act quickly. Do it, Marcus ordered. Lydia, stay here with Ayla and monitor the barrier. I'll head to the ship and trigger the signal. Before they could voice any objections, he slipped through a gap in the shimmering energy field and darted towards the wreckage, the shadows of the trees enveloping him. He moved quickly, his training guiding him as he navigated the debris. The silence of the forest weighed heavily on him, punctuated only by the distant sounds of Jarek's approaching team. Reaching the ship, he accessed the control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface. Come on, he muttered under his breath as he activated the distress signal. A series of warning lights flashed, and a low-frequency pulse began to resonate from the ship. Attention! This is the Prion Vessel 927. Mayday! Mayday! Echoed a synthesized voice, a mix of Ayla's language and human tones, broadcasting to any who might hear it. Satisfied, Marcus turned to head back to Ayla and Lydia when he heard voices approaching. Jarek's team was close. He ducked behind a pile of metal debris, holding his breath as shadows flitted by. They moved with purpose, their uniforms dark and utilitarian, glinting in the moonlight. Search the area, a commanding voice ordered, unmistakably Jarek's. We have to secure the site and retrieve Ayla. She has crucial data that cannot fall into human hands. Marcus clenched his fists. The Prion commander was relentless, and his intentions were clear. He needed to find a way to protect Ayla and the mission without drawing attention to himself. As the soldiers spread out, he noticed a small opening behind a thick tree, an escape route. Just as he was about to make a run for it, a sharp crack sounded from his right. He turned quickly, heart pounding. One of the soldiers had tripped over a fallen branch, cursing under his breath. Stay alert. The alien could be nearby. Marcus took the opportunity to slip away, moving silently toward the opening he had spotted. He was almost there when a voice rang out behind him. Over there. I see something. Panic surged through him. He dove into the thicket, praying the underbrush would hide him as he crawled through the low-hanging branches. His pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out the sounds of the soldiers. The distress signal continued to pulse from the ship, drawing the Prion's attention away, but Marcus knew it wouldn't last long. As he made his way back toward Ayla and Lydia, he heard a roar of frustration from Jarek. Find that human. We cannot let him interfere. He finally broke through the trees, relief flooding through him as he approached the energy barrier. Ayla, he called out softly, hoping they hadn't been discovered. I'm back. Lydia turned, her expression a mixture of worry and relief. What happened? She whispered urgently. There are at least 5 soldiers combing the area, Marcus said, catching his breath. Yarrick is determined to find us. We need to move now. Can the barrier hold while we escape? Lydia asked. Ayla's expression was grave. I can sustain it for a few more minutes, but we need to act quickly. If we're caught, my people will consider you a threat. Let's make a plan, Marcus said, heart racing as he glanced back toward the darkening forest. We'll head in the opposite direction of the signal and try to circle around the site. If we can reach the edge of the forest, we may be able to find a way back to civilization. Ayla nodded, her eyes filled with determination. I can guide you. There are paths my people have used for centuries. If we hurry, we can reach the river before they realize what we're doing. With the plan set, Marcus crouched low, peering through the shimmering barrier as he prepared to deactivate it. Get ready, he whispered. As soon as I lower the barrier, we move. Stay close to me. With a deep breath, Marcus pressed a button on Ayla's console, and the shimmering energy flickered before disappearing. They moved quickly, slipping through the dense underbrush as shadows danced behind them. Over here, he heard one of the soldiers shout, their voices growing closer. Go, go, Lydia urged, pushing through the foliage. Ayla led the way, her instincts guiding them through the tangled forest. The sounds of pursuit faded slightly, but Marcus knew they were not out of danger yet. As they plunged deeper into the woods, Marcus felt a renewed sense of hope. They had a chance, but only if they could reach safety before Yarrick and his team caught up. The mission was about more than just survival. It was about forging a bond between their species, a bond that could change the course of both their futures. After what felt like an eternity of running, Ayla finally slowed, her breath coming in quick gasps. The river is just ahead, she panted. We can hide in the trees along the bank. Good, Marcus replied, glancing back to ensure they weren't being followed. Let's move. They reached the riverbank, the water flowing swiftly under the moonlight. Ayla pointed to a cluster of trees that offered a natural concealment. We can hide there until it's safe. As they crouched behind the foliage, Marcus felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through him. The sound of footsteps faded, but they could hear the soldiers yelling in frustration. They were close, but not close enough. Keep your heads down, Marcus instructed, watching as the Prion soldiers scoured the area. We'll wait for them to pass before we decide our next move. The 3 of them remained silent, breaths shallow as they listened to the chaos unfolding around them. Yarrick's voice rang out above the others. Spread out. We need to find them before they get too far. Marcus's heart sank. They needed a diversion, something to pull Yarrick away from their hiding spot. Ayla, he whispered, do you have any more of that distress signal or anything else we can use? Ayla considered this, her eyes narrowing as she thought. I can create a sound-emitting device. If I program it to emit a frequency, it might lead them away from us. Do it, Marcus urged. We need to buy ourselves some time. As Ayla set to work, Lydia kept a lookout, her sharp gaze scanning the shadows. Moments later, a high-pitched sound pierced the air, echoing through the trees. Did you hear that? One of the soldiers exclaimed. It came from over there. Yarrick barked out orders. Follow the sound. We can't let them escape. With the soldiers distracted, Marcus nodded to Ayla and Lydia. Now's our chance. Let's move while we can. They slipped from their hiding spot, making their way quietly along the riverbank, hearts pounding as they stayed low to the ground. With each step, they felt the distance grow between them and the danger that lurked behind. As they reached a bend in the river, Ayla paused. We should be safe here. The sound will keep them occupied for a while. Marcus turned to her, a mixture of gratitude and determination in his eyes. Thank you, Ayla. You saved us back there. She nodded, her silvery skin shimmering in the moonlight. We must keep moving. There's still a long way to go. Dr. Lydia Carr took a breath, steadying herself. Let's find a way to repair your ship, Ayla. We need to establish communication with your people and find a way to ensure our safety. With a renewed sense of purpose, the unlikely trio continued along the riverbank, unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. The forest closed around them, hiding them from view as the shadows lengthened, and the stars shone bright above, a reminder that, in the vastness of the universe, their fates were now intertwined. As the trio moved deeper into the forest, the sounds of the river faded, replaced by the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The air was thick with anticipation, and despite the danger they had just escaped, a sense of camaraderie began to blossom between Marcus, Ayla, and Lydia. They came across a clearing where the moonlight bathed the ground in silver. Ayla halted, her multifaceted eyes scanning the surroundings. "This spot will do for now. We can rest and plan our next steps." "Good idea," Lydia said, dropping her gear and kneeling to catch her breath. "We need to assess the situation and figure out how to repair Ayla's ship." Marcus surveyed the clearing, his military instincts still on high alert. "Let's set up a perimeter first. We can't afford to be caught off guard again." He began to gather fallen branches and rocks, creating a small barricade around their resting place. As he worked, Lydia rummaged through her supplies. "I have some basic medical equipment. We need to check for injuries," she said, pulling out bandages and antiseptic. She turned to Ayla. "Are you hurt?" Ayla hesitated, then shook her head. "I'm fine, but I appreciate your concern." Her voice carried a hint of sadness. "The crash, it was traumatic. My people depend on me, and I fear I've already failed them." "You haven't failed anyone yet," Marcus said, glancing up from his work. "We're going to find a way to get your ship repaired and contact your people. You just need to stay focused on the task at hand." Ayla nodded, drawing strength from their support. "Thank you. I need to access the systems and determine what's salvageable." She moved to the center of the clearing, her fingers deftly working on a small device that resembled a tablet. "I'll see if I can establish communication with my ship." Lydia took a deep breath, her mind racing. "Once we can communicate with your people, what do we tell them? How can we assure them that we're not a threat?" Ayla paused, her gaze distant. "My people are suspicious of humans. We've always considered you a potential threat to our survival. But if I can show them that we're willing to work together, it might open a path for peace." Marcus returned to their conversation, intrigued. "What's your culture like? What do your people value?" Ayla's eyes sparkled as she spoke. "We value unity and the strength of our community. Each member contributes to the survival of our species, and our relationships are built on trust and mutual respect. I believe that humans share similar values, even if our methods differ." "Then we need to demonstrate that," Lydia said, nodding in agreement. "We'll show them that cooperation is the key to survival for both our species." As Ayla worked on her device, Marcus scouted the perimeter, his heart still racing from their narrow escape. The rustling of leaves and occasional hoots of owls reminded him that they were still in a precarious situation. He paused, taking a moment to steady himself. When he returned, Ayla was staring at her device, her expression grave. "The systems are severely damaged, but I may be able to establish a weak signal. It won't be enough for a full conversation, but it's a start." "Do it," Marcus encouraged, leaning in closer. "Anything is better than nothing." Ayla nodded, her fingers dancing over the screen. After a few tense moments, the device emitted a low hum, and a series of garbled sounds crackled to life. "Ayla, do you read me?" A voice crackled through the device, sounding distorted but familiar. It was the voice of her commander, Zarek. "Ayla, respond. Where are you?" "I'm here, Commander," Ayla replied, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I've made contact with a human. We're in the forest, but we need help. The ship is damaged, and I fear the humans are coming after us. Stay where you are. We're sending a team to retrieve you. The humans are a threat, and we cannot risk exposure." Zarek's voice carried an urgency that made Marcus's stomach twist. "They're not a threat, Commander. They're helping me," Ayla insisted, her voice rising. "If we don't work together, both our species could be in danger." A pause filled the air, heavy with tension. "You're jeopardizing the mission, Ayla. I can't allow human interference." "Commander," Marcus interjected, stepping forward. "You don't understand. We can offer you a partnership. We both face extinction if we don't cooperate. We can find a way to save your people. Stay out of this, human." Zarek's voice boomed, anger lacing every word. "You are an enemy, and I will not negotiate with you." Ayla's expression hardened. "You don't have to see us as enemies, Zarek. I refuse to let fear dictate our choices. We can work together." Another pause hung in the air, and Marcus felt the weight of their fates resting heavily on Ayla's shoulders. "Very well," Zarek finally said, his voice colder. "But if you are wrong, I will not hesitate to take action against the human. I'll send a team to your location. But remember, Ayla, this is a fragile alliance." The connection fizzled out, leaving the clearing silent except for the sound of their breathing. "That was risky," Lydia said, her brow furrowed with concern. "What if Zarek sees us as a threat?" "He already does," Marcus replied, crossing his arms. "But it's a risk we have to take. We need to show Zarek and the rest of the Prion that we mean them no harm." Ayla looked at them both, determination igniting in her eyes. "We have to prepare for their arrival. I want to show them that we can work together, but we must be ready for anything." Marcus nodded. "Let's make sure we're not caught off guard this time. I'll set up a lookout point in the trees. Lydia, you and Ayla can prepare any resources we might need." As Marcus climbed into the branches above, he kept a vigilant watch over the forest. He had always been a soldier, trained for combat and crisis, but now he was faced with a new challenge, one that required diplomacy and understanding. As he scanned the area, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The tension hung in the air, thick and electric, as the moon rose higher in the sky. Down below, Lydia and Ayla worked swiftly, gathering supplies and formulating a plan. The bond between them deepened, a fragile alliance forming in the face of adversity. Minutes turned into what felt like hours, and Marcus remained alert, eyes flicking between the trees, the shadows playing tricks on his mind. He heard the distant rustle of leaves and the soft crunch of branches. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the darkness. "Ayla, are you here?" Zarek's team had arrived. Marcus held his breath, ready to act as he waited for the signal from Ayla. The moment of truth had come. Marcus perched in the branches, watching the ground below with intense focus. He could see the faint silhouettes of figures moving through the trees, their forms cloaked in shadows. The air was thick with anticipation, and he could feel his heartbeat echoing in his ears. "Ayla, stay low," he whispered into his communicator, though he knew she could see the approaching figures. "We need to keep a low profile until we know their intentions." "I understand," Ayla replied, her voice steady. "We'll wait for your signal." The figures moved closer, their silhouettes becoming more defined. Marcus could make out the glint of armor and the distinctive shape of their weaponry. They were Prion warriors, and they exuded an air of authority that sent a chill down his spine. Ayla had described her people's advanced technology and training, but now, seeing them up close, he realized the magnitude of what they were up against. If Zarek's team viewed him as a threat, the situation could escalate quickly. He held his breath as the warriors neared, their voices low and purposeful. Marcus focused on their leader, a tall figure with sharp features and multifaceted eyes that scanned the area with predator-like precision. It was Zarek, and his expression was tense, filled with suspicion. "I can't believe she would compromise the mission like this," Zarek muttered to his team, his voice carrying through the stillness of the night. "We'll retrieve Ayla and eliminate the human. There's no room for error." Marcus's stomach tightened at Zarek's words. He had to act fast. With a signal from him, Ayla would have the chance to speak up, to sway Zarek before it was too late. As the Prion team settled in the clearing, Marcus prepared himself for the confrontation. He could see Ayla crouched low beside Lydia, her expression a mix of determination and fear. He silently urged her to keep calm. Finally, he spotted Ayla's nod, and he dropped silently from the tree, landing with a soft thud on the forest floor. The sudden sound startled the Prion warriors, their eyes snapping in his direction, weapons raised and ready. "Stand down," Zarek commanded, his voice firm and unwavering. "Identify yourself, human." "Easy there," Marcus said, raising his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. I'm Andrew Marcus, and I'm here to help Ayla. I'm not your enemy. Zarek's eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus, assessing him as if he were a puzzle to be solved. You dare approach us, human? Do you not understand the danger you present? Ayla stood up beside Marcus, her silvery skin shimmering in the moonlight. Commander Zarek, please listen to me. Andrew is not a threat. He's here to help us. We have a chance for an alliance, but we need to work together. Zarek regarded Ayla with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You've been compromised, Ayla. How can you trust a human? They've always been a danger to us. Maybe that's how we've seen each other, Marcus interjected, his voice steady despite the rising tension. But this is a new beginning for both our species. The threat we face is far greater than our differences. Zarek's expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. What threat do you speak of? Ayla took a step forward, her eyes pleading. Our populations are dwindling. My people are desperate for help, and humans have the genetic diversity we need to survive. We need to explore this partnership. Zarek hesitated, glancing back at his team. The warriors exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to proceed. Listen to her, Zarek, one of his team members said, a young warrior named Nala. We've seen what desperation does. We can't allow our people to perish because of old prejudices. Zarek's expression hardened again. This is not a discussion. We have protocols, and we cannot risk exposure to humans. Zarek, Marcus said, his voice calm but insistent, if we don't establish communication and collaboration, we're both going to lose everything. If you can't see that, we're already doomed. For a tense moment, silence reigned in the clearing. Zarek's multifaceted eyes locked onto Marcus's, searching for something. Fear, weakness, maybe even the hint of sincerity. Finally, Zarek let out a heavy sigh, his shoulders dropping slightly. Very well, he said, relenting, though his voice was still laced with caution. But know this, I will not hesitate to defend my people should you prove untrustworthy. Marcus nodded, feeling a surge of relief. That's all we can ask for. Let's move to a more secure location, Ayla suggested, her voice steadying. We can strategize further away from prying eyes. With Zarek leading the way, the group began to trek through the forest. Lydia and Ayla fell into step beside Marcus, sharing quick glances of hope and apprehension. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty, but for the first time, it felt as if there was a chance for collaboration between their worlds. They reached a small clearing with towering trees forming a natural canopy overhead. It felt isolated, a sanctuary where they could discuss their next steps. Once settled, Zarek gestured for them to sit. Explain how this alliance would work, he commanded, folding his arms across his chest. We'll need to establish clear communication channels, Ayla began, her confidence building. We can set up a secure frequency that both our ships can use. And we'll need to assess what technology we can share to repair my vessel. Your ship is in poor condition, Zarek replied, his tone skeptical. Even if we can establish contact with your people, they will not accept a partnership without assurance of safety. Then we need to demonstrate it, Lydia suggested. We can conduct joint training exercises. Prove that we can work together effectively. Zarek raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. And what if something goes wrong during these exercises? I can't afford any weaknesses. Then we prepare for it, Marcus said, feeling a sense of purpose swell within him. We can conduct simulations to ensure both sides understand each other's capabilities and limitations. This way we build trust. Zarek's eyes narrowed, contemplating Marcus's suggestion. Very well. But understand this. My people have faced danger before, and we do not trust easily. We won't ask you to, Ayla replied, her tone earnest. But trust can grow from shared experience. We can save each other's futures. The air felt charged with possibility as they began to sketch out their plans. Zarek's demeanor slowly shifted from skepticism to cautious openness, and Marcus couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. As they strategized, the night wore on, and the moon hung high in the sky, illuminating their newfound alliance. But beneath the surface, the threat of Zarek's earlier orders lingered, a reminder of the fragility of their situation. Would this alliance hold, or would old prejudices and fears tear them apart? Only time would tell, but for now, the seeds of collaboration had been sown.